Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be here and share about the role of information architecture in designing online classrooms and prioritizing accessibility and standards. So, a little bit about myself. Um, I have been teaching for almost 30 years now, 27 years, and online designing classroom and teaching online for over 20 years. So, my background is interdisciplinary health informatics, technology, user experience design, and education. So, so let's get started. We'll talk about the role of information architecture and how important it is in designing online classrooms, in fact, any product. And to get a little bit about the definition of product and designer, those terms I'll be using. So when I use the term product, traditionally it meant physical products. We would go to the store and purchase. But in information age, we have digital products, we have hybrid products. So product, by definition in today's world, it can be physical, hybrid, online, digital. So for our purposes, the online classroom, that is a digital product. And designer, when we use the term designer, it can be instructors, it can be instructional designers, anyone who is constructing the message or the product. So disability, when we are designing these online classrooms, online spaces, it is very important that we think about people with disability. And information architecture is about structuring, it is about organizing, it is about labeling information. It is about, especially in this online spaces, how easily people can find what they're looking for. And ultimately,
Sorry, doctor, you closed the PowerPoint. Can you
oh,
can
I
you put the
did.
PowerPoint back up? Yes.
Uh-oh. Hmm.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Can you see it now?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank
Okay. Good. Good. So it is about structuring information. It is about organizing. It is about labeling. So when we are applying information architecture in the construction of the message or in the construction or the design of the product, it is not just to make the product efficient, effective, and desirable, but we also have to think about the user experience as well. We'll get into that in a little bit. So, according to CDC, a disability is any condition of the body or mind, that is the impairment, that makes more difficult for the person with the condition to do certain activities, that is activity limitation, and interact with the world around them, participation restrictions. And we will see now the problem or the um, the there is a huge problem of problem in the sense the how many people have this disability or this issue. According to CDC, 1 in 4 adults in the United States have some type of disability. And this disability, it can be physical disability, it can be mental cognitive disability. Somebody has vision loss or hearing loss. Um, so all kinds of problems. And before the COVID, when we thought about disability, we were thinking about people who had physical disability. But during the COVID time, we realized that people had mental health challenges as well. So that is a form of disability as well. And there can be so many different types of disability, once again, according to CDC's website. And you can see people have cognition issues, mobility issues, independent, hearing, vision, self-care, and you can see the percentage. And this is once again from CDC's website. What happens with people who have disabilities? And you can see without and with, the obesity goes up, smoking, it is double, have heart disease almost 2, 3 times, have diabetes almost twice. So, and 1 in 4 adults with disabilities do not have a usual healthcare provider. So, this is just to give you the background of people with disability. So, in other words, people with disability, they need the help. And we as designers, we as, especially when it comes to this online space, we as designers, we have a social responsibility to help them. Now, to get into the situation of disability and in the society, so there is something called as this implicit bias. But before I get into the implicit bias, there is something that um, there are people who discriminate towards our people who have disability. That is what is called as ableism. What this ableism really means is some people, I won't say all people, but some people, they think people with disability are inferior to people with who do not have the disability. And that can be because of social and cultural conditioning. The other important thing is that the question of implicit bias or this unconscious bias. As human beings, we think we are just, we are fair, we're equitable, and but that is not always the case. This implicit bias, which is triggered so fast without any conscious involvement, and it is so fast, which is about 1/10 of a second, and that can influence what we consciously, our thoughts, our behavior, our attitudes, all kinds of things, contrary to what we rationally believe. So that is something that we need to think about as designers, and this implicit bias is very much prevalent in our society. So the question becomes, what is the role of information architects and what can they do? Information architects are people who organize and structure content. And their role is critical because in the online space, most cases, the instructor designs it or the instructional designer, and then students, they use this online classroom whenever it is convenient for them. So designing and structuring the information is critical. What we don't want as designers, we want this information that we provide or to use the space, we want it to be meaningful. At the same time, it would be an enjoyable experience as well. So information architecture sits at the intersection of content, context, and user. So as information architect, when we wear the hat, we have to think about who are the users? What are the expectations? What is the environment like? How do we structure the environment? What are the elements in the environment? And for the elements, we have to think about the affordances and the limitations. For example, based on the affordances, we decide what to put or what to use where. For example, if it is a university ID card, for example, we have a picture and we have text. It is extremely difficult to replace the picture with text because it does best what it's supposed to do. As an architect, we don't want to put a toilet in the kitchen. because it doesn't belong there. So that is something about structuring, about organizing what goes where. We have to think about it consciously. The important thing about information, well, let me give you some examples and then I'll get into experience. So let us say color blindness, that is very much prevalent in society. There are people who fail to distinguish between different colors. For example, green from red or blue from yellow. And this color vision deficiency, according to some studies, one in every 12 male has this, and one in every 200 female have this problem. So that is also some of the things we have to think about. Let us talk a little bit about old age. Well, when it is very challenging to define what old really means. Because when there's degradation, whether it is the physical or the mental, it doesn't really happen uniformly. So, but some studies show that it starts by the age of 25. There was some research study by the Nelson Norman Group, and they said by age 26 and above, people who try to do tasks online, it is 0.8% less per year as compared to people younger. So there is. When some people, it doesn't affect all. When we get to 40, we have vision issues. When we get to 50, we have hearing problems and motor skills problem. So it varies, but it does happen. The point I'm trying to make is when we think about disability, we try to draw a line. It is them and us. But the point is, it is all together. It does affect everyone. That is an important thing for us to think about. The other thing is, let us go a little bit outside the classroom space. Let us say to this EHR, electronic health record system, that the doctors and the patients use. When the patient is trying to read the doctor's notes, as it is putting intrinsic cognitive load. They're trying to understand what is this thing here. And imagine if the information is not structured, if it is not organized properly, it would be so difficult for them to understand and do what the doctor intends them to do. It'd be extremely challenging. So this applies to online spaces as well. So when we have this online classroom space, how we structure the consistency matters. It does matter. If we go beyond classroom spaces and we look into environment, for example, and how we manage natural resources, according to WHO, this was in 2018, and there is drinking water crisis. About more than 2 billion people lack access to safe drinking water. And recently, there are some cities around the world that have been in the news. For example, Bengaluru in India, and even Australia. In Australia, a couple of years ago, they slaughtered camels because they were consuming too much water. Cape Town in Africa as well. There is also food crisis. According to WHO, I think it was 2018, 821 million people are malnourished. And it just doesn't happen in third world countries. In North America and Europe, it is 8%. So how we structure, organize, and use the resources is critical. It is important. And speaking about the ocean and the rise in temperature, according to UN study, in between 1880 and 2012, the global temperature, has gone up 0.85 centigrade. And the water of the ocean, which was so pristine, is getting polluted because of this fishing trolleys and the commercial oil tankers and all kinds of things. So it is important that structuring, managing, whether it's the natural resources or in the classroom, the information, that is critical. Now let us think about a little bit in this scenario, how does the human brain work? There is a very interesting book by David Eagleman, and the name of the book is Life Wired. And it talks about the brain. Of course, there is still a lot to learn about and understand how the brain works. But he writes in that book, the brain receives these electrical signals from different parts of the body, millions and millions of signals, electrical signals. And what the brain does, it tries to extract patterns after patterns from those signals. And then it assigns meaning to them. And this meaning is subjective. So that is how the brain works. It doesn't see, it doesn't hear, it doesn't feel anything, doesn't touch anything. But it is this thing, mechanism, or this thing which analyzes and assigns meaning to this. That is how the brain works. Now, if we think about how the mind works, and Daniel Kahneman, who is the Nobel laureate, who has written this fascinating book, Thinking Fast, Slow. And he has done decades of experience, the mental involvement in experience. And he argues that the mental involvement, it varies in intensity and speed based on the situation. And he defines it as situation one, system one, and system two. What is the system one? The system one is it is it happens super fast at the unconscious level, and just like the implicit bias. And system two, we are consciously engaged, and it is much slower. Why this is important from the perspective of experience? Because in order for the user, the student, to have positive experience or any type of experience, they have to be consciously engaged with the product. And if you think about why this experience is so important, we live in this experience economy. When people go to Starbucks or buy any other product, it is not just the product or the service, the experience does matter. And if you think about this highly successful companies, which are very high up on this net promoter score, NPS score, for example, Costco and Apple and Ritz-Carlton, Netflix, Amazon, what they have done, they have mastered the art of designing and delivering powerful, positive customer experiences. And the key is consistently. So the question for us as designers is, how can we design these digital spaces that people feel welcome, they feel happy, and they have a positive experience? It is something similar to when people go to Disney. There are old people, young people, all kinds of people, and they want to come back, happily want to come back over and over again. So how can we, that's the challenge for us as designers in designing these digital spaces, how can we design these spaces that people, the students, would be happy to come back to it over and over again? Now, in terms of accessibility standards, there are a lot of standards. For example, the Americans with Disability Act. It is about when we construct or change or alterations of public facilities, commercial facilities, or state public facilities. That is for buildings. But then we also have the W3, that is a worldwide consortium, their recommendations for web content. And they have so many guidelines how to use content, as well as even about coding as well. And then we have the authoring tool accessibility guidelines, and that's about the tools itself, how we author them, and the authors, how we use it. We have the accessible rich internet application, WAI, that is, how do we create this um, or use this interface or the content that would work with assistive technologies. There are all kinds of guidelines. So one of the things that I like about this USWDS web design system, this tagline, usability for every ability. And they have these four things. What is this? Perceivable, operable, understandable, robust. Perceivable, users must be able to perceive the information presented. Operable, users must be able to operate the interface. Understandable, users must be able to understand both how the user interface operates and the meaning of information presented. Robust, users must be able to access the content as technologies advance. As technologies like browsers and other assistive technologies evolve, the content should remain accessible. So these four principles are the foundation of Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. It was amended in 1998. In 2018, Section 508 incorporated the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG. And if you go to their website, they have all detailed recommendations. It's wonderful. It's really, really good. So one of the things I wanted to share with you is when we are designing any product for that matter, let us say digital product, there are so many things to think about. So we have to think about, we start with a goal purpose. We have to think about the users. What is the background? What's the computer literacy, their behavior, the attitude? We have to think about the construction of the message. Let us say if it is digital, has something to do with message. So when we are designing the application, digital application, we have to think about the content that is appropriate. We have to think about the technology. We have to think about information architecture. That is one of the things in this whole scheme of things. We have to think about the form, functionality, interaction design, and there are other factors as well. For example, social, cultural. We have to think about inclusive design, semiotics, sensory design, type of communication, all kinds of things. That is only half the story. The other half of the story is this. When the user engages with the product, that is what the Hungarian American psychologist says as the flow state, right? His name is Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. So flow state, that's the book name. And then after that is the experience. What experience did we get from this engagement? And then we have whatever is the goal. We want them to learn, we want to retain, we want them to apply. That is all good. But then what is the takeaway? The takeaway is important. That determines whether they come back or not come back. It needs to be wrapped in positive emotion and lasting memories. So this takeaway is critical, is critical. So inclusive design is, we can apply inclusive design principles in designing online classes, online spaces. And inclusive design is much more than disability. It is much more inclusive. So we can do that. And what principles can we use? We can use universal design principles. And one of the great things is design for all. And here are some of these principles: equitable use, flexibility in use, simple and intuitive, perceivable information, tolerance for error, all kinds of things. So we can use that. So before I end, I would like to share with you why the role of information architects' work is so important. And once again, going to David Eagleman and what he writes in his book, Life Wired. The brain is ever changing. And when the child is born, the brain, it comes equipped with, pre-equipped with expectations. In 1960s, scientists did research based on the experience. Does it change the brain in measurable ways? And what they did was they experimented on rats. One set of rats, they had a good environment and they were good at tasks, whether it was learning or memorizing something, remembering something. And even when they did the autopsy, the dendrites were lush. Another set of rats, which were raised in not so good environment, they had trouble with the tasks and with memory and learning. So this ever-changing brain, and what the American psychologist William James describes as plasticity. In neuroscience, it is brain plasticity or neuroplasticity. So with people with disability, in many cases, they have been pushed the corner. We can design online spaces in such a way, we can provide them, they can have a wonderful experience, and this experience can help them with their learning. So I would like to end with this. As designers, instructional designers, teachers, we have a social responsibility, and it is not just about creating products that are effective, efficient, and desirable, but we also have to think about the user experience, which is critical, important, as well as think about the individual, the society, and the environment. Thank you. Okay, if there are any questions.
There's one question.
Sure.
Um,
Um, so one of the things I can share what I do, and that might help. Um, so what I do is the important thing is when I set up my classes, I structure it really well. And there is a consistency from one module to the other. There is for each module, there is an overview, and then there are resources. And I try to create tutorials, and I provide articles if there is any article relating to the topic. I try to share videos. But here is a very interesting thing. If it is too many of them, then the student feels overwhelmed. So we have to find the sweet spot. Um, and that is one of the things. And I try to, even with the assignments, try to explain and articulate as clearly as possible so students don't have too many questions. That is one thing. The other thing is, irrespective of anyone has disability, they share with me a note or not, I give them uh, extra time. And I teach master's students, and many times students juggle with job, full time, part time, family, school, social responsibilities, all kinds of things. So I give them extra time so there is less of the stress. And the other thing is, if somebody did a mistake, I ask them to resubmit. So creating that environment which is stress free has worked for me. Any other questions? It is, but it is more work for the teacher though. When they resubmit, we have to read once again the whole thing. But it is good in the long run, it is good for the students. Any other questions? No more questions?
You have 10 minutes.
Okay, okay. Oh, I could have talked more.
I
Yeah, yeah.
think you must have answered everyone's question when you did your presentation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Do you want to give them any contact information if they want to
Oh,
contact
sure,
you?
sure, sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah,
put that in the chat. I think that'd be helpful.
yeah,
Um,
sure. Mm,
oh, someone asked a question. Hold on, I'll post it. Do you see it, doctor?
yeah, yeah, I do.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just
yeah.
posting this. Okay. Um, I just copied and pasted my signature. Are there any learning tools, online programs that you find especially helpful for people with disabilities? I've been teaching online and designing courses for over 20 years until we had this Canvas. Blackboard I used, and there are so many other ones. They were just not intuitive at all. And even the Blackboard, they made some changes, update, it's still not very good. What I don't understand is how people do not see things from the user's perspective. And Donald Norman, who is like the godfather of user experience design, he talks about the problem with design is when the designers go by the gut feeling and without really testing the product with the target or with the intended users. So I think that is a very big problem, very, very big problem with these tools. And when, yeah, Blackboard is terrible. Canvas is better, but I still think there is a disconnect between the student and the instructor. There's a disconnect. So how can we create a space or design a space where people will feel comfortable? And one of the things about um, in person, there is an energy, and that is missing with this online classes. So I think in terms of communication, maybe more video of it, or maybe the time is not right now. In a couple of years, we'll be using more of this new technology, virtual 3D or augmented reality, where we can see other people in time, and there would be better communication. So I still don't think Canvas is better, but still we are not still not there. If you think about gaming, right? And how people are engaged to that product. But Canvas, no matter how beautiful the content is, they just want to do the assignment as quickly as possible and done. That's it. Maybe we need to borrow some ideas from Disney, what they do to create the products, to design the products. So one of the things about Disney is they get to, with this experience, to create the macro experience, we have to focus on the micro experience to get into the details. So when Walt Disney was thinking about building this Disneyland in early 1900s, so he went to parks to observe people. And he realized that people could carry their trash to a certain distance and then throw it away. And that is why I'm forgetting the exact distance. That is why in Disney, they have this trash cans every maybe 25 feet or 30 feet, something like that. So I think we need to spend more time observing people, more time of making it more engaging. To give you an example of engaging, the flow state, what Mihai Csikszentmihalyi talks about in his book. To give you an example, that if, let us say, you like skiing and you have a dream to go to the Swiss Alps to ski there, and the time comes, you have purchased your tickets, you have your gear, you go there at the top of the mountain, and somebody says, go, you're flying down. You are consciously in the moment, but you forget about time, you even don't think about yourself. The question becomes, can we take the students to that zone where they forget about time, just like games, playing games, gamification, that they would be so much engaged that they will lose time. Here it is more about forcing them. You have to go. So this is Daniel Pink talks about in his book about intrinsic motivation. And that is a problem with industries where they employ people. It is all external motivators. You have to do this or else we'll dock your pay, right? All kinds of things. But intrinsic motivation requires another set of things: independence, flexibility, that they can contribute, do something for society, something larger than themselves. And of course, money, the salary is important. All bets are off if they are poorly paid. But just a high salary is not enough. There are all these other things. I think one of the things about our education model, overall, if you think about it, it is a very rigid model. And if you think about the best places to work, the best companies to work in the country, they do have flexibility there. But where is the flexibility? So I think it is the mindset of the people who make the decisions that what Donald Norman says, the problem with designing this classroom. We need a new approach with people with new mindset.